Chrissy. It was fab.
Now, just moving to Judy. There we go. Judy Davie, thank you so much for joining us today. Judy is also I called Chrissy a cookbook author, Judy. So, and she says, she is just a cookbook of different things. So Judy's written multiple books from the beginnings as the food coach, right through various books on teaching people how to read labels. And after a stint in working at the Sydney markets, she wrote a book called The Greengrocers Diet, which is about seasonal eating. And it was inspired by watching the rather substantial wholesalers not eating their own produce first thing in the morning, but I'll let her tell you all about that. So thanks so much for joining us today, Judy, and I'll hand over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really quite honoured to be included in this list of incredible pioneers and natural products, and I was listening to the Good Bra, amazing things going on, and just all credit to the individuals who are doing their bit. I'm quite surprised to be on here actually, but I'm delighted. I guess maybe I've been doing my bit for the last 20 years in trying to get people to eat healthily. So the story goes back nearly 20 years, well before I wrote the book, The Greengrocers Diet. When I was actually working with Jennifer Nielsen, and I was observing around this corporate office how unhealthy people were, how they just were eating and grabbing whatever food, not Jennifer, I might add, but grabbing whatever food they could get, and you could see that people were sort of operating on a not, they weren't 100% healthy. They were sort of maybe, as I would describe it, sort of running on maybe 2 cylinders when there were many more to run on. And so in a fit of complete and absolute madness, I decided to start up the business, The Food Coach, which was around the same time when people were getting life coaches. And I thought, well, how great, I'll just be a personal trainer in healthy eating, and I will coach people to improve their eating habits. Go into the pantry, look at what they had, show them how to read food labels, restock, rebuy, learn how to cook, and that would be that. And it's really interesting when I think about my journey for the last 20 years, nearly 20 years. Stephanie from the Good Bra delivered a cracking line, and I thought, I'm stealing that one. If everybody who made anything was responsible for what they made, the world would be a different place. That applies to all of us. I remember in the early days of the Food Coach, finding out about this fabulous product called quinoa, and people needed to eat quinoa. It was a seed, it was gluten-free, it was marvelous, it was going to make people so much healthier. And then of course what happened was the people in Peru and Bolivia, where that was their staple diet, could not afford to buy it, and the consequences of that were they were migrating to cheaper carbohydrates, and the incidence of type 2 diabetes in these areas went up. So I can't claim all the responsibility for that, but it did make me think at that point, goodness, we need to be a lot more careful about what it is we are recommending to people in terms of what they buy, what are the consequences of what they buy. And so I guess over the years, I started off by just thinking about people's health and how food would affect their health. And as time went on, became much more aware of how food affects people's health and the planet. And so whilst there I was trying to get people to eat a fresh and natural diet, I hadn't really in the early stages paid much attention to how in the process of having a more fresh and natural diet, you would be minimizing the amount of packaged food that you ate, the amount of packaging that was going into landfill, the plastics, and so on and so forth. It's a much, much bigger story than I had initially realized. My work with the Sydney markets came about by complete accident, and I must say I was absolutely delighted by the opportunity. I had been delivering a talk at one of the health resorts up in the Hunter Valley, and met a lady who I got on quite well with, and asked her, whether she knew of anyone that might be interested in working with me on a new book idea that I had. And she, being this incredible dynamo girl, quickly got together 10 people, called me up and said, yep, I've got the group, you come and visit them. So I then frantically had to put together a whole lot of recipes for what was to be my next book, which is the Greengrocers diet. I won't give that too much more of a plug. Maybe I'll show you pictures later. And we worked together, this group of ladies and myself, where I would go and visit them every week. I would deliver a pack of recipes, say, just want you to try the recipes. I want to talk to you about the effects that these recipes have got on your body. We want to talk about weight loss, digestive health, how much it costs you, and the real priority of these recipes were a greater prevalence of fresh natural produce, green leafy vegetables, lots of fresh vegetables. So not to the exclusion of dairy and meat and fish and poultry, but certainly more fresh produce than anything else. And I was surprised by the results of that, I have to say. I was thrilled by the results of that, I must say. I had been very resistant about writing a diet book. I didn't want to get into that whole dietary bandwagon. However, I very much believed if people just ate fresh natural food, if they ate more vegetables, lesser amount of fruit than anything else, that they would lose weight and there would be other benefits to be experienced as well. And so it was kind of, you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is. You're going to have to try and see. So we had 10 ladies. One lady had been very, very overweight. But more importantly, she suffered from fibromyalgia. There were days when she couldn't get up. She was too exhausted. And from perhaps within the second week of her testing these recipes religiously, sticking to the portion sizes, sticking to every single ingredient, her symptoms of fibromyalgia started to diminish. She had more energy. She could go walking. She was bursting out of her skin with excitement. I was thrilled to hear from these women who were mothers. They were buying food for family, who were initially saying, this is expensive. We're having to buy all of these new ingredients. But I was delighted to hear them say, actually, once you get in weeks 2, 3, 4, it's not expensive at all. We're not buying the crap food. Things like silly things, well, not silly things at all, but people's menstrual pain was reduced. Digestion, you know, we had women there who admitted that they rarely could go to the bathroom. They used to use things like Metamucil and other products from health food stores to help them go to the loo. Didn't have to do it at all. They were feeling so much better. So I was very inspired by that. Weight loss happened, of course. Weight loss happens if you just eat less and you eat good food. Weight loss will happen, but I don't really want to talk too much about that yet. So the Greengrocers diet was designed to be a diet that focused on fresh produce, but also it was a diet that was written around the seasons. So, and how we eat in winter differs to how we eat in spring and summer and in autumn, naturally, because the fresh food that we buy is in season. It's inexpensive, it's more economical, and it tastes so much better. It's more flavor, and I don't think it's any great coincidence that nature tends to deliver what we need to eat at the time of year that we need to eat it. So I am absolutely passionately against eating foods that are out of season, and that was well before I thought about food miles. Just to see cherries in June is so disappointing coming in from the USA. One, because they've had to fly from the other side of the world, but two, because cherries are such a pleasure to have when you've had to wait to have them. So when January comes along and the cherries come in season, what a delight it is to have them. And that delight is diminished if you've been munching them happily through the whole of winter. So the Greengrocers diet was focusing on fresh seasonal produce. And also the Greengrocers diet was focused on buying the fresh seasonal produce from greengrocers and farmers market, because I, at the time and today, still very passionately believe that we should be supporting these small businesses who've had the stores for generations. So the kids that are the grown up men and women that are running Greengrocers today, typically their fathers and grandfathers ran the stores before. And sadly, around this country, we're losing that. And in countries like the UK, that is gone, and it doesn't come back, because being a greengrocer is not a skill that you just inherently have. It's learned. It's almost something, as one of the greengrocers told me, it's almost something that you should take an apprentice to do. So I wanted to help the greengrocers, so it became the Greengrocers Diet. And I thought, well, goodness, I really need to get in there, and I need to meet the greengrocers and the wholesalers, the people that really are at the heart of this fresh produce, and see what they think of the Greengrocers Diet. And that's when it became such good fun, because if any of you have been to the fresh produce markets in Perth and Brisbane, Sydney, you'll know it's a world completely different to the one that we know. The activity is running all night long. You know, these guys are still there right now. During COVID-19, there are hundreds of people that are milling around that are making sure that we get fresh produce in our homes today. It's all credit to them. It's an incredible life. But what was interesting, I found, was that so many of them were so unhealthy. They considered the fruit and vegetables that they sold to be a commodity, and didn't consider that they actually were the real health food experts in this country. And that was something I wanted to hammer home to these guys. So I found a friendly greengrocer and said, you know, could you get a bunch of guys together? I'd like to put them on this program that I'm running. It's going to be called the Greengrocers Diet, and I need some willing people. And so, wow, what a journey that was. Incredible. These charismatic, mad Italian, mainly men, all signed up to go on this diet, and I became known as Mom. You know, I would tip up at 6 o'clock in the morning with my set of scales and my little pack of recipes, and give them the recipes, put them on the scales, weigh them up, write in my report, and it was just phenomenal. It was fun. It was very good fun. But what was really important, so important, was that we measured the blood pressure. Obviously, we did weights. We measured the blood pressure of all of these guys on week 1. We had a nurse come in and do that. And of course, found out about any other medical conditions that they have. And I'm claiming that this cures people. Certainly, I don't cure people, but I do claim, as many nutritionists, dietitians, and medical professionals will tell you, that this type of diet, a fresh, natural diet, will reduce so many of the chronic disease problems that we have got out there. Type 2 diabetes, heart condition, high blood pressure, in the instance fibromyalgia, all sorts of things. So many people who are carrying 20 plus kilos, and most of them, those men, are suffering from sleep apnea. They can't sleep at night. They're getting no rest. There's just, you know, the problems go on and on. And so what was to be 10 weeks working with these guys ended up being, I don't know, maybe 20, maybe longer. And to this day, many of them are not out of my life. I'm extremely fond of them. Massive weight loss was realized from them all. Their energy returned. They were walking better. A lot of them had joint problems, hip pain, inflammation, and on it went. 12 weeks on, the blood pressure of every single one of them was reduced, and they were fighting fit and ready to go on for more. I've got to tell you, they haven't all kept at it. You know, that's the hard thing about losing weight, and keeping it up, particularly when you work all night. But they know that they can do it, and they know that they can do it again. But one of the things, and maybe this is why Jennifer has asked me, I should say I was going to be doing a cooking demonstration, and I may still do while I did this, but I've got talking. One of the things that really that I landed on, I suppose, a saying that I landed on while all of this was going on, was a saying, which is, eat fresh, shop local, buy less, eat less, weigh less and waste less. And it's just ridiculously sensible. When I think back on my parents, my grandparents, they didn't have the weight problems that we have today. This chronic disease that we are, you know, so many, 45, maybe more of different parts of the population are suffering from, just didn't exist. We didn't waste food in the way that we waste food today because we couldn't afford to waste food. It was a ridiculous thought. And so while I haven't gone into the whole waste aspect in the Greengrocers diet, and I think I will, I have no idea what the time is, let me check. I think I might just go on to a little bit of a cooking thing because I thought it might be handy because we'll have something to eat tonight. But I just want to show you how I can produce a no waste chicken dinner. So we'll start off by giving you a bit of a flick through this book here, because there are absolutely beautiful pictures in this book, and they're not by me. They're done by a fabulous photographer called Brett Stevens. And I'm showing you these beautiful pictures, not really because I'm trying to sell you. In fact, you might not even be able to see these, but it's not because I'm trying to sell you the book particularly. It's because I'm going to show, what I'm going to show you in this cooking demonstration doesn't look pretty at all. This is kind of real life, and I want to show you this to begin with. So you can see this isn't very attractive, but this is my little dog.
Judy, can you hear me? You've just glitched on your sound there.
Oh, can you hear me now?
You're right again now. Yep, that's good.
Oh, that's still strange. I didn't touch it. Anyway, shall I carry on with the dog treats?
Indeed.
So these are dog treats, and I make these for Maisie. And these dog treats are made from the leftovers of the stock that I make from the leftovers of the roast chicken. And here's the roast chicken. So this was last night's dinner. So I'm just going to whack it all into my stock pot because I kind of, that's going to be useful for us to have later. So 2 secs. Last night we had roast chicken, and we had roast pumpkin, roast potatoes, and Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts, the enemy to many people, but for us, we love them. And what I want to do is to make some stock, and then from that stock, I want to make Maisie's dog treats. And I also want to do something with the leftover roast vegetables. So into here, I'm going to put, excuse me, I'll be back in 2 seconds. The tops of the leek, which would normally get put into the compost or thrown away, they're going in here to help boost the flavor of my stock. And I'm going to make this in a pressure cooker because it's quicker and easier and uses less power. 2 carrots, which are sacrificial, whole, lovely carrots that I don't mind putting in there because I'm going to make dog treats that Maisie loves afterwards. And these are just the little ends of the pumpkin that you know, could go into the worm farm, but I'm just chucking them into the stock too. This is going into the pressure cooker for about 45 minutes. I will have stock in 45 minutes, and I will have a pot of soup later on today as a result. So I'll just whack that away. And I'm going to put it on with 2 liters of water. I hope you can still hear me, everyone. Can you still hear me? Okay. Sorry, I'm having a malfunction. So anyway, that's all. I'm back again. I'm having a bit of a malfunction there. So at the end of last night, I always throw in lots of extra vegetables. And so in here, I have got the leftover potato, the pumpkin, the Brussels sprouts. I'm going to just throw in some, maybe this is just half a pack of feta. That's going in like that, easy done. A nod to some green vegetables. I've got some parsley in the garden, so all I'm just going to do is to break that. I'll cut it. Chop the parsley in here, and then I don't know how many eggs I've got here because I think it's about 7. There might not be enough, but it's all I have. And as Chrissy says, just use whatever you've got in your pantry. Now, that's from a health point of view, that's pretty good. It's a good source of protein, good fiber, protein from the eggs, fiber from the unpeeled potatoes, from the pumpkin, from the Brussels sprouts, a little bit of greens, and I'm going to just whack that in the oven, and it'll go in there for probably about 30 minutes. And that's it. So, where do we go to with this story? So after the Greengrocers died, after I had the Greengrocers, we then I had to find some more people to do the autumn section. And at the time, I was having a few technical issues up here in Avalon. We had problems with our internet. So I asked this fellow his business was Whiz Bang Computers to come and fix my computers. And he came in and we had quite a few problems with the computers, quite a few, so many problems with the computers. But by the time I plucked up the confidence to ask him whether he'd be interested in trialing my diet, I felt like I knew him quite well and was brave enough to ask the question. So I asked him, and he said, well, he had been trying to lose some weight, that he had been to his doctor. His doctor told him that he had a fatty liver. And so he would ask his wife, and he said, I'm quoting, I'm not saying this, he said, she could be a bit tricky. So he went away and he asked his wife, and she said yes. And they both came round to the house. At the time, Sarah was, she was about 65 kilos overweight, and I was a bit shocked and concerned. However, she also had chronic pain in the back of her neck, and every week she had to go to visit a chiro. She couldn't spend too long in her car because her back and her neck hurt, and she said yes to the diet. And she said to me one day, she said, can I have a cheese sandwich for my lunch? And I said, no, but you could have a cheese on whole grain bread with avocado, tomato, lettuce, carrot, and cucumber sandwich. And that was the point, that you add fresh produce to every meal. So Jonathan, unfortunately for me, Jonathan was an analytical man who liked to follow everything to the letter, and he did all the cooking at home. So he started to cook, and Sarah, in a very, very short period of time, noticed that the pain in her neck and back was reducing significantly. It was incredibly encouraging. Sarah lost 60 kilos on the Greengrocers diet, became a huge advocate of it, and that sort of thing doesn't happen overnight, I have to say. But they followed the diet because the recipes changed from winter to spring to summer and autumn. They weren't eating the same things all the time, which I think is a big, big thing. You know, it's a big deal. Nobody wants to eat the same food all the time. It's boring, right? So that was Sarah's story. And there were many stories after that. We then, because Jonathan had been told by his gastroenterologist, and I should say all these stories are in the book here, but Jonathan had been told by his gastroenterologist that he needed to lose weight because he had a fatty liver. And the gastroenterologist, of course, saw the changes in Jonathan and wanted to know what he had been doing. And the next thing, I had a visit from a lovely old man called Godfrey. and Godfrey was in his late 70s, and he also had a fatty liver, and he had type 2 diabetes, and the doctor said, Godfrey, you need to do something about this because you're heading for an early death, which is horrible to hear. So Godfrey came around to visit me, and he said, you know, I'm really willing to do anything, anything at all, but I have one problem, and that is that I don't like vegetables. So, you know, that could have been a bit of a problem, except I just chose to ignore that and said, well, you know, that's fine, Godfrey. Just hold on a minute, I'll be back. So I popped into the kitchen, this kitchen here, and I mixed up a little blend of green smoothie and handed it to Godfrey and said, what do you think of this? He took a sip of it and he said, oh, he said, that's quite delicious. What is it? So I said, well, it's spinach and it's celery and it's dates and lemon and a few other bits and pieces. And he said, oh, I don't mind that. And then he pointed at the same meeting, he said, and this is a true story, I actually did have these things in my fridge genuinely. He said, well, I don't like mushrooms. I said, well, that's all right, Godfrey, I'll go and just need to do something, I'll be back in a second. And I'd really had some mushroom soup in the fridge. So I heated it up and I said, what do you think about this? And he said, oh, he said, that's delicious. And what is it? And of course, that's mushroom soup. And as time went on, Godfrey, he was adamant that he didn't like broccoli, but he started to enjoy everything else. And in the end, he was sending me pictures of him with a shopping trolley just brimming full with fresh produce. Godfrey lost 25 kilos. His liver, a fatty liver never goes away completely, but his liver was, you know, he got the all clear from the gastroenterologist and he felt remarkably better, which was lovely. And I guess the point of why people enjoy the vegetables in the Greengrocers diet is I have 10 principles in the book. The first ones you've heard, which is eat fresh seasonal vegetables, or eat more vegetables than everything else. Make sure you buy them in season. Try to buy them locally from your local greengrocer. One of the other principles is to balance the flavors. What I love in Ayurvedic medicine, they talk about balancing flavors so you ignite the Agni, which is the inner fire of your digestion. Maybe more scientifically, when you balance flavors, sweet, sour, bitter, pungent, sweet, sour, bitter, pungent, astringent. Sweet, sour, I think I'm missing something. Sweet, sour, bitter, pungent, astringent, I'll think about that. What happens is that you tend to produce more digestive saliva, which then signals down into your belly, and more digestive juices are produced in your stomach, and you digest your meal better. If you digest your meal better, the nutrients from the food go to all the places that they're meant to go, and you're getting more value from the food, you're getting the benefits. The food is more bioavailable to your body. And I often say to people, can you imagine, I just want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine having some avocado spread onto, say, some whole grain sourdough. Both delicious, absolutely delicious. Avocado, whole grain sourdough, great, lovely food. Imagine eating that, and then imagine eating that with a little sprinkling of lemon juice or lime juice, a little bit of cracked black pepper, a little sprinkle of salt, and if you have some chopped herbs, fantastic. It's a different proposition. It's a little bit of extra effort, not a lot, to make a completely different meal, if you like. And that is I guess the secret of when you are preparing vegetables into a meal, is making sure that you balance the flavors with other ingredients in order to make those vegetables much more yummy. So there's a lot of, of course, we know we shouldn't be eating a lot of salt. And if you have a diet that's full of highly processed food, you will just by default be eating a lot of salt in your diet. However, I don't know, there's not a vegetable I know of that doesn't taste good with a little bit of salt. But the beauty of that is that vegetables are very, very rich in potassium. And if you have a diet that is high in potassium, you can afford to have a bit of salt, because these two nutrients are partners in crime. The potassium in your diet will help to negate the effects of a high sodium diet, causing pressure on the cells and raising your blood pressure. So you know, it's okay to have a bit of salt. If that, and it's perfectly okay. You know, the old Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's perfectly okay to have a bit of salt if that is going to help you have a lot more vegetables. So the potassium-sodium ratio relationship is one of the other principles of the Greengrocers diet. So I was going to make a soup, a chicken soup, which the recipe is in the book, which when you've made the stock, which I will make when I get my pressure cooker on, when you've made the stock and rinsed or drained the stock and got the stock, all the stock residue, blended it up in the high-speed blender, and then spread that out onto a baking tray, dry it out to produce doggy biscuits. You've then got the stock. So the stock is the easiest thing in the world. There's an old Scottish saying, which is don't teach your granny how to suck eggs. I'm a bit cautious about saying this because, you know, maybe I think everyone knows how to make soup, but maybe they don't. But this soup is an absolute winner. It's in the autumn section of the Greengrocers diet. And basically what you do is you get the bottom bit of the leek. So there's no piece of the leek at all that is wasted. So I put the top into the stock, the bottom is sliced, saute the bottom of the leek in the way that you would onions for a few minutes. That's it all there. Can you see that? I'm not really used to doing the cooking show bit. Couple of grated carrots, throw them in. Third of a cup of brown rice, rinsed, in that goes, and then into the pot goes your stock, and turn it on and cook it. I have leftover chicken leftover from last night. That will go into the pot after the rice and the veggies are all cooked up. And that's a soup that will last for a few days. That is more delicious as time goes on. So where are we at with time? I'm 1:30, and I don't know whether you want me to speak for another 15 minutes, Jennifer.
Judy, perhaps you could answer the questions. Can you see them, or would you want me to read them?
Where are they? Oh, got it. Okay. Do you have a view on the microbial value of local food as well, and the idea around local immunity? That's an interesting question. The bottom question is easier to answer. Would it be reasonable to assume that Maisie is a dog? Yes, Maisie is a dog. Thank you for that question. So do I have a view on the microbial value of local food as well? I have an idea that the less food has to travel, the less processing, well, definitely the less processing, the more natural the food is, the more valuable it is from at a microbial level. I am of the belief, you know, we are of the generation, I'm of the generation where you rolled around in the ground and you ate dirt. Unfortunately, these days, the dirt that we're crawling around hasn't got much microbial value in it. So that's very sad. It's a huge problem. There's people working on ekko.world that are much more involved in this than I am. I remember listening to a marvelous chap called John Crawford. He was a Scot as well, who's professor whose work was in the microbial activity of soil, and he was basically saying that all soil today is denatured, that we don't have this, you know, we don't have the same number of living creatures, this whole sort of world underground that we I've got another question, I'm just trying to answer this one, but I like to equate a compost, our gut like a compost, that our gut is like a compost. That, you know, there are certain things you don't put onto your compost. There are certain things you just shouldn't put into your gut. You know, we have a long way to go. The absolute ideal would be to eat fresh, natural food grown in your own garden. There is a question here: how much food do you grow on your own? Although at the moment all we have is herbs, some sorrel, some, you might be able to see it out there. We've got some wicking beds that my husband Martin built. So we've got some parsley and sorrel, and we've got some, what else have we got? Lots of sage, lots of mint. We had a go at growing beans, which was, that was an interesting story. We bought some broad bean plants. I love broad beans, particularly love, there's a recipe in there, I particularly love broad beans with avocado and black olives with lemon juice, black pepper, stunning. But we put up 5 broad bean plants, amazing results. I was, you know, suddenly understood the whole Jack and the Beanstalk story. They went shooting up to the heavens. It was all very exciting. I was Googling every minute what to expect. The flowers arrived, the bees arrived, they were cross-pollinating. It was, you know, it was happy days. And then the beans arrived. And when the beans were just ready to harvest, absolutely ready to harvest, we were going to have so much out of broad beans. I asked Martin to go and get a ladder, because obviously I couldn't reach them because they'd grown so high. And I made the big mistake of not harvesting them straight away, and every single one of them was cleaned off the bushes the next day. The possums, we had handily given them a ladder. They scaled the ladder and they cleaned those plants free of beans. So it was a good lesson for me. One of the most important lessons I think everyone should learn is how long it takes for food to grow. So yes, we have had broccoli there, we've got a bunch of things, and it takes so long for a head of broccoli, for example, 24 weeks, I think, for a head of broccoli to grow from small seedling to fully grown plant. When you see that, you have a much greater appreciation of the value of fresh food, so you don't waste so much fruit. Everything that we have in our house is used. There are a few things that go into the worm farms. We have 2 worm farms, but for the most part, every piece of food is used, because we just have learned to respect and value food, how much it costs, how long it takes to grow, the people that grow it, the people that are dealing with it in Sydney markets and other markets around the country. You know, we just have a much greater appreciation. Another question: what is the most nutritious greens? People say that lettuce has no nutritional value. Yeah, people say lots of things. Lettuce, the dark leafy greens have certainly got the greatest nutritional value, without doubt. However, iceberg lettuce has a good crunch factor, and if iceberg lettuce is the vehicle for putting other good quality nutrients into your system, then what is wrong with iceberg lettuce, I say. And if it helps you kids, introducing them to eating vegetables, then, you know, don't make it hard slog for you. Get them to eat things that they like, and they'll be more open to eating other things later on. But you know, there's lots of controversy about this. So dark green leafy vegetables like your silver beet, your Swiss chard, your spinach, sometimes called in some countries silver beet, they are very, very good for you. They're packed full of nutrition, vitamin K, vitamin C, vitamin E, and on it goes. However, they do have some, it's escaped my brain right now. So salicylate, no, yes, salicylates too, but there's also, oh, I can't remember, I'll have to come back to you on that one. There's also, if you don't blanch them, sorry, it's just escaped me. If you don't blanch them, you can absorb chemical compounds or plant compounds that can absorb minerals in your body and excrete them out. So always best to blanch them if you can. That sounded like I had no idea what I was talking about. It will come back to me as soon as I leave this meeting, but okay. Anything else? Yeah?
Sorry, I'll just interrupt you there. I think that's all the questions on the board at the moment, isn't it?
I think so, Jen. That's all done.
No, there's no escape that easily.
Oh.
Just a couple of things. Oh, first of all, I see Gert is here from Farm Wall. Welcome.
Oh, hello, Gert.
Oh, I said we better, hang on, I'll unmute him. That might be handy. Oh, there you are. Hi. Hi, Gert. Thank you for coming by. We probably should have had you on before, Judy, so you could have shown us how to grow the food that she has turned around and told us how to cook. Judy, just one thing you said earlier that quinoa became expensive, but and people started eating processed food. But what was that about? How did that happen?
So it was the people in Peru and Bolivia where it's grown more than anywhere else in the world. I'm glad to say that we're growing it here in Australia, but back in the early days when people just got a whiff of what was quinoa and what was it, why was it so good, the native people of Peru and Bolivia, that was their staple diet. But because the Westerners caught on to the health benefits of quinoa, there was a greater demand for it, which meant that the locals couldn't afford to buy it
right
the way they could before. So they then had to buy sort of cheaper processed carbohydrates, which was very sad. So now it's been grown more extensively in other countries, but that was the story in those days, and that was back in what would have been early 2000s. That would have been, yeah,
when it first started.
Yeah.
With Farm Wall, because I think from that extreme now to the kind of work that Farm Wall are doing, there's a real shift to very local, isn't there, with microgreens?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've been waving that flag for a little while about microgreens and how easy it is to grow them at home. And yeah, literally, it's a variety of produce, fresh produce with a lot of nutrients and a lot of benefits for our health, which we can grow on our windowsill. And by creating little micro farms in our own homes that not only grow fresh produce, but also add to our happiness and our well-being, we can actually bring the experience of growing food into our homes. And yeah, farm to plate in under a minute. Yeah, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg in what's possible and what the real value is of growing food at home.
Yeah, I guess to both of you, is there then a range of food that now I don't completely understand the nutritional value of not microgreens, so to either of you, they do have a higher concentration of nutritional value for some reason, as I understand it. Would you explain that?
Yeah, so a microgreen is the first stage of a plant. So when it's got its first two leaves, so that's when the plant's still fully packed with nutrients because it needs those nutrients to start growing. So and become a larger plant. So often it's untouched as well, and it hasn't been affected by any pesticides or herbicides or weather or pests or anything like that. So it's in its purest form, packed with nutrients. And because we're using so many seeds from microgreens, it's a lot of little plants all together, rather than the crop of one plant. And yeah, it's been proven that some varieties of microgreens, not all of them, can have up to 40 times more nutritional value than the fully grown varieties. And if you can think, rather than one season, you can actually have 52 seasons a year in your kitchen. And you can grow year round, have much more nutrients, and exactly know where your food's coming from, how it's been grown, and that it's completely transparent and untouched. It really allows you to start managing your diet in a different way. You might not get the same volume of weight out of broccoli microgreens, for example, compared to a whole broccoli. But you definitely get more of the nutrients, and you definitely know it's clean and it hasn't been touched by we don't know of. Yeah.
And Judy, do you have a view on how best to cook them?
Microgreens, I have to say, I love microgreens and I love growing them at home. And thank you to Gert, because he was the man, Farmwell, with the organization that introduced me to them. For the best nutritional value, to get the most out of them, I do like to have them raw. I prefer to eat them raw. But what is incredible for such small little plants is they're so flavorsome. So typically what I do is, I might make like a cracker with avocado and, maybe an egg and a bit of kimchi or something, and then whack a whole lot of microgreens on top of that. And to Gert's point of them being more nutritionally valuable, I figure that, the figure that I've had sort of banded around is that they're 4 times more, maybe that's the averaging out, I don't know, 4 times more nutritionally dense than the fully grown counterpart. So if you have a quarter of a cup of microgreens scattered on top of a delicious cracker with, other yummy things, you're getting the equivalent. And, this is not science, but in my mind, you're getting the equivalent of having a whole serve of vegetables. And the general rule is 5 serves of vegetables a day. Don't stop if you want to have more, of course, but for good health, that's what you should be aiming for on a daily basis, which is why I think microgreens got such a big place in this world. As Geert says, they're not covered in chemicals. You're watching the whole thing grow, and it's an extraordinary process. You watch the whole photosynthesis. They go from this tiny little seed germinating, they're yellow, and then they become green, and there's just all this action happening. It's a real pleasure to watch, to think that you're a farmer in your little urban house.
Indeed. That touches on another point that I know is one of your bugbears that you certainly raised many times, and that's around that perhaps microgreens solves, and that's that it's impossible to eat the recommended daily diet, from what I understand, of the range and physical amount of fruit and vegetables. Is that true? And do microgreens kind of resolve this? Is
it impossible? It's not impossible, but it's hard. It's hard when we're out in our normal world, in the normal world where you're busy all the time. It's hard. You have to make a real conscious choice to do it. But you can, if you've got a little farm of microgreens, you just come and snip a little bunch of them and eat them raw.
Yeah. Have you got a comment on that, Gert?
Yeah, absolutely. I like what I love about microgreens is that they're extremely versatile. So you can literally add them to any meal, from like a breakfast smoothie to like an omelette to a salad, and dress up every dish. Not only makes the dish look prettier, but also like tastier, like Judy said. And it's so easy. Like when you have them handy, it's incredibly easy because you don't need to cook them. It's a top up to any other dish. If it's a burger or anything you're having, you can add microgreens to, and basically snip them straight off and add them to your meal. And knowing that when you're doing that, you're actually improving your nutritional intake. We're doing a bit more in detailed studies with University of Melbourne and they're very interested in that field and how microgreens can actually be grown effectively and efficiently in the city to increase health and well-being in everyone's diet, not just people who can afford it. Because at the moment it's very hard to find microgreens. If you go out to the supermarkets, you really have to go to the specialty stores to be able to buy them. And they're expensive then as well, and often they come in packaging, so they have a lot of plastic, etc. So the more we can make it easy to grow them at home, the more joy we'll get out of it. But actually having that kind of that instant gratification of seeing a seed germinating and within 5 days to a week, we've got a plant that we can harvest. Like that's quick. No farmer in regional areas has that kind of satisfaction, instant satisfaction. So, and yeah, we worked with Judy in the Cultivate program that we did at Westpac to actually create awareness around microgreens, because it's, most of us don't really know what they are and what the real value is yet, because it's been a product that's been used by chefs for quite a while. But as consumers, we're unfamiliar with it. Like we know carrots, we know potatoes, we know broccoli, but microgreens is not something that we're used to be seeing in the aisles of the supermarket.
Yes.
So how can we get them easily available into our homes and into our mouths? Yeah, because they are really, really good for us.
Yeah, well, which is a great segue into what you're going to tell us all about. So I think it's what mung beans and alfalfa is about the extent of what anyone's ever grown at home before, or sprouts. Judy, is there anything else you wanted to cover with us today? Because it'd be great to get your view on the three main things that you'd like to leave everyone with before we transition to
what would I like to leave everyone with?
food would be nice.
Don't waste food. Oh, there's a nice tart.
Wow, that was fast.
From a. This is terrible. I've got an oven glove that says this is effing delicious. I better hide that. I just don't waste food. Eat fresh, natural food. Don't waste it, and eat seasonally. That's really it from me, I think.
Yeah.
I'm dying to ask Gert a question, but I'll probably wait until the end of the segment and pop it up there.
I'll go right ahead. Now's your big chance.
I'm great. Can I ask him now?
Of course.
Oh, good. I've got a captive audience. Gert, I have grown microgreens on the hemp fiber, as you know, but I've also tried it on the sort of coya, what do you call it, like coconut kind of. I can't remember words today. It's like a soil, but it's not. It's just a fibrous, loose material. It's really messy. It's not messy. It's not dirty, but it's messy because you can't get really down cleanly to the base of the microgreen. And I wondered if you had any other suggestions on what to grow the microgreen, the growing medium for the microgreen, based on those two.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, like with a micro, it's first of all, very important to make the distinction between a microgreen and a sprout. So with a microgreen, we're never allowed to eat the root, because sprouting takes another level of hygiene involved in the process. But then if we're growing microgreens, the hemp matting that we use in our systems has been proven the best way for us to do that, because it's easy, it's clean, there's no soil, no dirt, and you can actually get most of the microgreen out without having to wash it if you cut it off.
Yes,
washing is always recommended, of course, but not always easy if you work with a small plant like that. The coconut coir is great, but sometimes it needs a bit of extra nutrition to really get the microgreen to that next stage of growth. What I like about in our story, we've got both, and so we use the hemp matting for high turnover microgreens, and because the hemp deteriorates within 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So for any microgreens that take longer to grow, like for example a basil or a coriander, and that's specific microgreens that enjoy that extra depth of soil, because the hemp matting is only 0.5 centimeter. We make the choice to actually grow it in coir, in coconut coir.
And is that the coconut coir matting, or is it the actual? I'm just describing.
You can get it in blocks that when you drop them in a cup and they're expanding. So it's still relatively easy to use, because you just kind of throw it in, throw some water on, and expanding, and you can see seed on top. And then afterwards, it's easy to replant it in the garden as well. So then if you've harvested 90% of your sprouted greens as microgreens, and you leave 1 or 2, then you're actually going to take that into your veggie patch and plant it. And that core will actually enrich your soil from a moisture perspective.
Yeah.
Core is a very good medium to maintain moisture in your soil.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that will actually help your veggie patch gain more moisture and create better growth in there. The coconut core matting is great as well, but we prefer the hemp because it's a bit easier to use, and it's got a good story as well. And if we choose the core, then we find that the extra benefit is in the debt. So So yeah.
Right. Thank you. I got advice from a professional. That's fab.
Judy, thank you so much. So really appreciate that, and I'd love some of that tart, but clearly that's not going to happen.
I'm going to have some lunch now. Guess what I'm having?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Local and zero waste. Greengrocers diet. Thank you so much, Judy.
Thank you, Jen.
And we shall